Hello, it's Kristen from the Together Act. Today I am going to continue talking about the KonMari method, which is from the Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. I have recently employed this method in my entire home, top to bottom, and I can say that the results are remarkable. Not only is my house tidier, but the energy in my house and the positive things that have started to happen as a result of the clutter being discarded is truly amazing. I am blown away. So first I'd like to just mention that I have realized that there are two main points that make the KonMari method a little bit different and that are kind of the go-to things that you need to remember. The first is that you keep only what you love, and you base the decision of what to throw away on what you're keeping. You choose what to keep, not what to get rid of. I think most of us go through our homes decluttering, looking around for things that are old and yucky and what we can get rid of, instead of looking around the room and deciding, what do we love in this room? That stays, and the rest goes. And so that method, just in and of itself, the simplicity of making the decision based on whether you love it, whether it brings you joy, whether it promotes peace in your home, whether you smile when you walk in a room and see the object, that has made a giant difference in this decluttering process, because I've decluttered many times over my life, but this time was different because I really chose what stayed based on if I loved it and how I felt about it. And then I didn't have to decide what I got rid of because everything else was what I got rid of. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that once you're finished the process of discarding, everything that's left needs a home. Everything. There needs to be a place to put every single thing that stays so that it always gets put back in its home, and then there is no clutter. The clutter can't grow if the piles don't start and if things aren't left out. If things have a spot and everybody in the house knows where that spot is, then you just put things away. And it sounds simplistic and at the same time sounds impossible, but it really just works. So once you have decided what stays, decide where those things will live. And part of the KonMari method is to put things in containers. So Ms. Kondo advises just plain old shoe boxes. Any kind of square or rectangular container, the less expensive the better. There's no reason to buy fancy storage contraptions. A simple shoebox will work, and a shoebox lid will work for some things, for smaller items. And so now when I open the cupboards underneath my bathroom sink, there is a container, and that container houses the lotions and the mouthwash and the things that we use on a daily basis, and they're contained in one small space, which tells me that I have what I need. And if there's a space open, say for shaving cream, which is gone, then I know I need to buy more shaving cream. It limits what I buy, and it reminds me that I have enough, and what I have has a home. So find some containers, and whether it's in your pantry, whether it's in your drawers, whether it's in the cupboards underneath sinks, put items in containers and have that be where they're replaced after they're used. It has made a giant difference, giant. Today I'd like to talk about books and paper. Now, the books and papers categories are two separate categories within the KonMari method. I'm choosing today to talk about both of them because they're both made of paper. And so books are one of the early categories. I think they're right after clothing. And so with books, same idea as clothes. You get all of the books in your house and you put them all in one place, and then you physically pick up each book and decide whether it sparks joy. I was thinking I was going to have a hard time getting rid of books because I was raised in a paper environment. There were no Kindles or computers or smartphones where you could read documents. And so I was raised in a book, paper, hold it in your hand kind of way. And so I thought it was going to be difficult to get rid of books. I was taught to respect books, and so discarding them seemed like it was going to be very hard. I didn't throw them away. I took the books that I got rid of to either Goodwill or to the library, or sold a few on Amazon, although they're kind of picky, so be careful about wanting to sell them on Amazon. However, I picked up the books, held them in my hand, and realized that there were a very select few that I really wanted to keep on my shelves. Those books spark joy when I see them for whatever reason, whether it's information that I still refer to, whether it was a book from a friend that I really love having, whatever the reason, there were a very select few that I kept. The others, I realized I had learned what I was supposed to learn from the book, or in some cases, I realized, as Ms. Kondo states, that I didn't really need to know what was in the book. She says that some of us have books that we are never going to read, or books that we have gotten halfway through. And she says, let those books just teach you that those aren't subjects that matter to you right now. And so once I approached it that way, I realized that there were books that I didn't really care if I ever finished, and I shouldn't feel guilty about passing those on to someone else, because someone else would be thrilled to have that book and want to read the whole thing. So the book category was fascinating, and I now have just a few books that I really love, and I don't have any guilt or any remorse about getting rid of the ones that I got rid of, and that has lightened the space on the shelves in our home quite a bit, and so that's been exciting. And then the next category is papers. Papers was the most daunting category that I handled, but it feels the best to have it done, and it is the easiest for me now to see how simple and how effective this KonMari system is. Papers, you bring all the papers, all the old file boxes and everything out of drawers and anything that's pending and all the bills, everything into one place, and then you sort through those. If when you're doing papers, you come up with sentimental papers, letters and greeting cards and that sort of thing, you put those aside to deal with those in the sentimental category with photographs, which is the last category, so that you don't get sucked in reading old cards and memorabilia. Those just automatically move to the side. And so then with papers, Ms. Kondo is pretty rough. She says, discard everything, basically. She believes in keeping the tax documentation and some paperwork that would pertain to the title of a car or home ownership information. But beyond that, she says pretty much get rid of everything. That manuals and warranties, all of that information can be done or found online, and that any credit card statements, all of those sorts of things can be set up online and do not need to add to the paper clutter in your home. So I have recently done that. I now have all of our bills. We had some bills set up online, but some were still paper. We had recently moved, and so I hadn't kind of fixed up the bill situation. I have now done everything electronically, and I have gotten rid of all of the paper copies of things that we no longer need. And I've gone through, we had old paperwork and files from cars that we don't own any longer. I'm not sure why I was keeping that. We had old tax information that is way outdated and no longer necessary for me to keep. So I have purged all the paper. It is now in boxes in my basement waiting for the next shredding day at my bank. You can check your local bank or credit union, because oftentimes they do free shredding days for their clients and members. And you can just take X number of boxes, whatever their limit is. I think my bank is 5 boxes. You can take the boxes to be shredded, paper clips, staples, file folders, all of that can be shredded together. And then you don't have to worry about any sort of identity theft problem. So my paper is all purged, but now just waiting for that day in the next few weeks. So the system now that I use is ridiculously lean. And actually, since I did the paper category, I have trimmed the system down a little bit because I realized I was hanging on to paper because of my old habits, and I really didn't need it. So the two things that I use now are this notebook, which I already had, and the paper category, Ms. Kondo advises, should be broken down basically into 3 parts. You should keep papers that either need attention, need to be saved indefinitely, or need to be saved forever. And that's pretty much it. Every paper that you have should fall into one of those 3 categories. And so the notebook actually is filled with, for instance, this is bus schedules for my kids to be able to refer to until they get the hang of what the bus schedules are. This is just a sleeve for some small cards or papers that I need to hold on to. And then I have a file for medical. Everything in these files is just in a plastic sleeve. This is the prescription for glasses. I need new glasses, and so this is my prescription. Once I'm finished getting the glasses, I'll be able to get rid of the prescription. And then the next section is reference, where I have some information that I need on a regular basis just to refer to. The next section is Together Act. That's just for business. The next section is financial, and that has different receipts that I'm waiting for things to be finalized for. Say, pictures for my kids' school. I can hang on to that paperwork in here until the pictures are in my hand, and then I can purge that. And I just made the tabs so that they were long enough to stick out, just made these out of old file folders. So that's the notebook portion. And then the other portion is this just little file, hanging file container. Here's where I have the 3 categories: needs attention, save, short term, and then save long-term or forever. And so in the needs attention, that's where all the bills go, any paperwork for my kids' school, any invitations to upcoming events, that all goes in needs attention. I check that pretty much daily and handle what can be handled. And then once I've handled it, if I need to save the paperwork further, then I put it into either the short-term or the long-term saving. For the most part, once I've handled it, there is some online record, and then I just get rid of the paperwork completely. In the save short-term, this is a little redundant to the notebook. So I'm still kind of tweaking this, because in here, basically, I could file these papers in the notebook in a sleeve until they've happened, and then I could purge them. But I'm still kind of tweaking that. Again, it's hard for me to let go of the paper. And then the long term is really, like I said, your, say, homeowner warranty, those kinds of things, if they're not available online. If they're available online, this folder can basically be empty. And it's simple. It really, it's so lean, it's a little scary. Like I said, I'm having a hard time accepting that it can be this pared down. But I gotta say, it's liberating. And the other thing is, now that I have a place, going back to the have a place for everything, now that I have a place for the papers, I don't just leave papers in a pile. I know that if it's something I need to tend to, it doesn't go in a pile to wait for me. It goes in the needs attention file. Because tomorrow, when I'm ready to address the things that need my attention, I can just pull the file and sort through the paperwork and handle things that can be handled. And then I don't have piles lying around waiting for me to handle them, which is my tendency. So that's really all there is to say about books and paper. I hope that this journey is as amazing for you as it is for me. I would love to hear about your progress and your process down below. If you've got any tips that I am overlooking or missing or, not aware of, I would love to hear those, because I plan to stay on this KonMari journey for the rest of my life. And I would love to be able to keep tweaking and doing it better. Thank you so much for watching. Have a super day.